when you first set the kind of, the task of the future of Christmas, first of all, my brain was like, okay, well, what are we actually doing the future of? Is it the future of religion? Is it the future of ritual? Is it the future of celebration? Is it the future of family and kind of family units and that kind of thing? Like, because the domains, to use the kind of, I suppose, somewhat technical term of Christmas is beyond just the 25th of December. It's like there's so many other things that we can actually be having an interesting conversation on the future of ... that are around that.
My name is Simon Waller, and this is the Future with Friends podcast, a show where I make zero attempt to try and predict the future, even though I'm a trained futurist, and instead I enlist my friends to do it for me. Thankfully, I have some very smart and insightful friends. Some of them are best-selling authors. Most will be considered leading thinkers in their field of expertise. I guarantee that every single one of them will have compelling and unique insights to share about what might happen next. Each episode, I invite a friend onto the show to explore the future of anything that they would like. I then task them to go away and create a short scenario about that future set at least 5 years from now, something that captures their hopes and dreams or maybe their fears and concerns. And then over the course of the show, we dissect that scenario. We start to think about the critical uncertainties, the alternate possibilities, and the decisions that we can make today to create the future that we want tomorrow. Welcome to The Future with Friends.
Hello and welcome to episode 19, our final episode of the year of The Future with Friends. This episode is a little bit different. I've actually invited back our very first guest, Steph Clarke. Steph was in episode 1, talk about the future of friendships, and I've got her back today to talk about the future of Christmas. It's a bit of a celebratory episode, given the time of year. And we're running this episode just a little bit differently. In the past, I have had the guest write a scenario, and then we've used that as the basis of a conversation to explore a particular theme or topic of interest to our guest. But we thought today we'd mix it up. And in this case, Steph and I have both written dueling scenarios about the future of Christmas. Steph's scenario starts to look through the lens of hyper-consumerism and how it might be that Christmas would change if our retailers got to choose what Christmas looks like. I've taken a slightly different path. My scenario looks at what happens when Christmas gets co-opted by a political movement. Throughout human history, we've seen Christmas has changed and morphed from being a pagan festival to being a religious one to being a consumerist one that we have today. And how might it change again in the future? This one is a little bit lighter than perhaps some of the other episodes. I hope you enjoy it. We do explore a little bit as well about, as futurists, how we think about the future and how we shape our conversations that we have with our clients. There's a little bit to learn about that. But more than anything, it's really just an opportunity for us to catch up, Steph, myself, and whoever's listening, to hear about the future of Christmas and celebrate the end of what has been a pretty awesome year on The Future with Friends. Thank you so much for joining us. Hello and welcome to The Future of Christmas. This is going to be the last episode of The Future of Friends for the year, and I thought, what better way to celebrate than to invite back one of, our favorite guest of the year, it turns out, the incredible Steph Clarke. Welcome back, Steph.
Hi, and is this where you award me best friend of the year? Is that the... my certificate will just kind of appear in the side or something. Yeah, little trophy.
Steph and I have had a running joke all year because her first episode that she did on the future of friends and friendships has turned out to actually be the most popular episode of the year. I got the stats. I got the creator recap. So everyone gets their Spotify recap. I got one as a creator. It turns out that Steph's episode is listened to on average 180% more than the other episodes.
Paul put in a pretty good effort, I think, as well, though, didn't he? But yeah, sadly not quite.
Yeah. So it turns out, yes, you are my best friend now.
But only for this year, though.
Only for this year, exactly. All counts reset next year. We'll try again. But there was actually some really cool stats. Because, you do these things and I suppose you kind of throw it out into the ether and you don't really know who's listening.
Yeah.
And
there is a certain irony that I've turned the future of friendship conversation into a popularity contest. So
yeah.
that goes against everything that I was talking about, but sure.
Yeah. But I do want to share a couple of other stats with you because
Yes,
I'm
great.
pretty
Yeah.
cool with this. Apparently, The Future of Friends was in the top 20% of all videos on Spotify.
Pretty good.
Like all videos on Spotify.
Yeah.
It was more popular than 88% of other new shows this year. And it had more shares than 92% of shows on Spotify. Which I think
Stephen Bartlett could only dream of those sorts of stats. So,
sure. I was kind of originally probably aiming lower, but now I think Diary of a CEO, that's very firmly in my sights.
yeah. Great.
It's been so fun and I've had such a great time. And I love the idea that I invite my friends on and we have these cool conversations and that other people then might listen to them. But today we are exploring something a little bit different and the format has been switched up a little bit. So in the past, the theory of it has been that I invite a friend on, they might be an expert or have a deep interest in a particular thing. I challenge them to write a scenario about the future of that thing. And then we kind of spend the rest of the show kind of dissecting it and kind of trying to understand what it all means. But for this show, we thought we're going to do, as I said, a little bit different. We've both written a scenario. So Steph's written a scenario about the future of Christmas. I have also written a scenario about the future of Christmas, and we're going to have dueling scenarios, which will play right into Steph's competitive streak. Yeah.
Yeah.
But before that, let's talk about your jumper.
I mean, my Christmas jumper, I might have to sort of stand up slightly to show it in its full glory. So this is a ghost of Christmas past, this jumper. This was created, so I think it was 2000 maybe 2011. Should have actually looked that up. But me and some of my sort of school friends, we all made each other a Christmas jumper. So it was like a Secret Santa. So you pulled the name out of the hat that was, who you were going to be making the jumper for. And then you made the Christmas jumper for that person. So this is my friend Emma made this one.
Yeah.
And then, but we'd all have like the crafternoons together to make the jumpers for each other. So we kind of knew what was being made, but it was quite cool to kind of see it take shape. So yeah, this is still going strong.
That's amazing.
Years later.
And the fact that it even still fits you after that amount of time, I'm not sure I would fit into my
It was a
jumpers
little bit stressful putting it on this morning. I was like, oh, hang on, I didn't think about that. So, yeah.
It's very beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah.
And have a cool little
jingles as we go through.
Yeah. And so I probably should just ask and check in on the book. How is the book on the future on friendships going? And is that a feature story in the book as well about making Christmas jumpers?
It's not in there, but it probably should be actually. That's a very good point. So I now have more content for the book, which is good. So
yeah.
So the way I've been describing it is through the meme that I saw the other week and saved to my phone, which is writing a book is like reading a book, except the book hates you. So that is the current experience of writing the book. But I've had some 3 friends who have done some pre-reading for me very recently and have given some excellent feedback. They love the content. There's some structure stuff to work on. So it feels like there's some good hope for the book in the next few months. So this is good. So yeah, using the summer to kind of do some.
So obviously not a stocking filler for this Christmas.
No, definitely.
Maybe a stocking filler for Easter.
Well, I mean, come back to that question after we do my scenario.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So as I said, we've both written a scenario, so we're going to take it in turns. Steph's going to go first. She's going to read her scenario. We'll have a little bit of a chat about what went into it. Then we're going to swap over and I'm going to have to go. And then we're going to see what happens with the rest of the conversation. But before we get to that bit, we also did, because we're both writing scenarios, we kind of colluded on the time frame. And we've agreed somewhere around 25 years. So just because we don't want necessarily round number, let's say it's 2051.
Okay.
I just feel like I just landed that on you now. It's like, shit, I'd only gone for 2050 and that extra year could really throw things. Is that?
It all changes. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. But yeah, it's 2050, 2051-ish. So yeah.
Okay. Well, Steph, let's throw to you. The microphone is all yours. Please tell us your understanding and scenario about the future of Christmas in 2051.
It was the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a possum. That's right. It's July the 15th, 2050, and it's Christmas Eve. In Australia, it was the supermarkets who nudged Christmas into July. It just worked better for their financial year. Summer holidays and New Year's Eve in December and January, Easter in March, April, and now the 6 different sporting national holidays in October. It just worked with their quarterly sales cycles, but they needed something to prop up Q1. By the late 2030s, moving Christmas to July was taking candy canes from a baby. The influx of European refugees who had fled to Australia during the 2029 to 2035 war with Russia meant that Christmas in July had suddenly become more than just a fun mid-year lunch thrown by whinging poms fed up with sweating under their Christmas jumpers in December. The 2047 Royal Commission into Christmas revealed that the supermarkets had quietly colluded to keep upping and upping the promotion of Christmas in July and making less and less effort for their historic December celebrations, eventually limiting selling foods like mince pies and Christmas pudding to only during June and July. Whilst there was a messy decade with many people celebrating 2 Christmases, by the time the Commission report was released in 2038, nobody really cared. The government finally caught on and officially changed the public holidays in 2049 off the back of a referendum. That eventual referendum was a landslide, as so many workers across the country were already enjoying this shift, which even before the referendum was made possible by floating public holidays that most organisations use to accommodate the range of cultures and religions in Australia. Australia's historic pattern of having everyone save their annual leave for one forced shutdown break at the end of the year, leading to an annual cycle of very tired people by November, was finally interrupted by this mid-year holiday. Not everyone was happy, of course. There were the usual protests and op-eds by more conservative Christian groups. The Kiddim, Keep Christmas in December movement, dressed in their telltale all-red outfits, were out throwing mince pies at the doors of the supermarkets, vandalising public space Christmas trees and plastering posters throughout the cities. But there were other industries that weren't happy either. Trade unions for construction workers were annoyed because July is one of the only 2 months now where they don't usually have to shut down sites due to excessive heat, so they had lobbied hard against losing productivity during this time. Queensland actually decided not to recognise New Christmas, as they call it, and the selling of Christmas goods before September is actually banned, making the Northern Rivers area of New South Wales now a mid-year Christmas tourism hub. People escape over the border for their festive hit. An unexpected seasonal boon for a once popular area that had teetered on abandonment due to inhospitable levels of climate change-related weather events during the 2030s and 40s. Airlines, on the other hand, are delighted. The different Christmas holidays celebrated in different countries around the world mean that they can pump up prices at multiple times a year as people travel to see different family members for the same holiday. The end.
Nice. So this is like almost the ultimate consumerism Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you must have had fun writing this.
I did, yes, yeah. And it was hard because I was like, oh, do I go like this like hyper consumerism kind of, which this is, but it's almost like, I suppose it's a version of the hyper consumerism version, or do I go kind of almost the opposite way and do the kind of everyone's, giving it up and we're all going back to, just doing a solstice kind of thing or something along those lines. So I decided to choose this, and there's a few signals that nudged me in this direction.
So I actually wonder, like, when you talk about the hyper-consumerist aspect of this, in some ways, this is like, it's so consumerist that we've actually empowered retailers to shift the date.
Yeah.
And it's almost like under the current model, there's not much sure about how much more consumering we can do. We've already got Black Friday and these pre-Christmas, and we got the post-Christmas sales. It's like, if you really wanted to maximize the consumer focus of Christmas, there's a certain legitimacy or like rationale behind it. We just need to shift the date so we can really blow this thing out a bit further. And how inconvenient that people might be at the beach, for instance, when you want them to be at the shops buying stuff.
Yeah, and actually it's funny, the Black Friday thing is one of the signals that I use, because this Black Friday in the last probably 2 years has become kind of Black November. Like, it didn't mean anything anyway. It isn't anything. It's just been made up. But it kind of means even less now, because it's just this like month or 6 weeks long kind of period of this sale that no one really knows what it's for, but we all kind of buy into it anyway, and pun intended. So yeah, there's kind of that piece was very much the kind of a leading signal for it. But there's a bunch of other things as well. There's actually it's not really a signal, it's more of an idea sort of inspired by the book Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, where in that, world that is the book is set in. The years are actually sponsored by brands, so you don't have like 2035 anymore. You have like the year of the the adult diaper is like one of them. It's like the brand of the adult diaper, and there is that. Like, so like this in they just because again it's that kind of sense of those things can be bought. And the other thing, actually, just I'd already come up with this sort of skeleton of the scenario, and then last week, Trump removed free access to national parks on Juneteenth and Martin Luther King Day, but added it on his own birthday. So it's just this sense of like unchecked power means all of these things come up for grabs. The stuff that we think is kind of somewhat set just becomes. And I did actually have a secondary kind of like almost storyline in here about in the US. Christmas was now on the 14th of June, which is Trump's birthday, but that divided everyone so much they actually abandoned Christmas altogether. So that, and they just do Thanksgiving now because the move of Christmas became too difficult, and Santa then became blue for some people who weren't kind of so wanting to celebrate kind of Trump Christmas, in kind of June. So anyway, that was a whole other thing I didn't quite.
We may need to pause this conversation until you've heard my scenario.
Okay, cool. We'll come back to that. But I think there's other things as well, that I lent on, which is just a sense that a lot more things that are set are becoming optional, and fruits from higher education, which in many countries was like, well, that's what you do, and you go and do these things, and work to an extent as well, or certainly career paths in that way feels kind of a bit more optional now. A lot of organizations are already giving people the option to choose their own public holidays based on what they celebrate or where they're from and things like that, which is an all-round, I think, good thing. Remixing. There is a sense of even like remixing religions as well, like people kind of choosing elements of the ones, the good bits of all of them almost, and being like, oh, celebrate that, I'll take that bit, I like this piece of Buddhism, and I like that bit of I like that holiday or whatever. And then this thing as well, you've got Easter eggs in the shops on Boxing Day and stuff like that, where like none of these things, it all just becomes this like nonsense after a while.
Yeah, I like that concept of remixed religion. But more broadly, like it's almost remixing how we celebrate our lives, right? Like, I find I had this conversation recently with a CEO. We'll catch up for lunch, and it's like I've gone away from saying to people, "Oh, I hope you have a great Christmas," because you can't assume that they would treat that period as being a Christian or religious thing. So it's almost like, hey, have a great festive season. And just like, yeah, festive season, New Year. I was like, well, we can't even say New Year because kind of for the Chinese and a lot of other cultures around the world, New Year doesn't actually fall on, the 1st of January. So it's really kind of almost like, hey, have a great 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I just say have a good summer. Have a good summer break. Like that.
Yeah, have a good summer break.
I think here it does kind of fit neatly into that. You can, people don't kind of reappear again until end of Jan or early Feb or whatever. So you can actually kind of bundle it all up and just be like, oh, don't, whatever you're doing, enjoy the season kind of thing.
Yeah, and I do like some of the other things that came into this about this influx or wave of migrants coming out of Europe following the war with Russia. And again, one of those things that, is something that we could see unfolding and has kind of these unintended consequences or unexpected consequences. And I think just kind of to step back in terms of looking at that stuff through the lens of futures as a more general concept is this idea that often when like, not just a worker, it's the work of Dave Snowden. And I remember this piece he wrote on LinkedIn that I read. He was talking about like in complex systems, the more oblique the intervention, then the less we can predict about what will happen next. So when you talk about something like a war in Europe, which is a very oblique event, like there's a lot of conflict, and then as a result, there's a lot of uncertainty. And the idea that this might throw up a situation where you have a mass migration to a place like Australia, and given Australia's current relationship with immigration, you think that'd be like, we'd be really comfortable if most of our immigrants were coming from Europe, rather than So like we can still meet our expectations around kind of refugees and all the rest of it, but do so in a way that feels a lot less conflicting for white Australia or European Australians.
Yeah, and I think as well with that, there's, in my head, and again, I didn't take that path, go deeper into that part of the scenario because that was kind of, I suppose, a sort of side point, but it was one of the feeding parts was, would it be a case where actually for all the Europeans who are already here, you then get 4 free passes to bring family members over or, that kind of thing. So you actually, that becomes a way of bringing people over, but with a connection here already. And that becomes, the mechanism for there end up being an easier route for people from Europe to here in that sort of situation.
We're going to go in a second. We're going to, I'm going to share mine and we're going to then talk about both of the scenarios together.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do that though, one question I would ask
Mm.
is, to me, when you do really good scenario work, there's a need to kind of find a sense of like almost like balance, like an energetic balance in the scenarios so that they don't come across as either being overly optimistic or pessimistic. Like there's like good in the bad and bad in the good. When you look at this and perhaps in the writing of this, what did you perceive to be the light and shade in the scenario? Where was the optimism and where did your pessimism sit in it?
The optimism is the getting rid of shutdowns at the end of the year. I think I've been angry about that for 11 and a half years. So that was like, for a personal, as a whinging pom myself, like that was like,
as a seasoned whinging pom.
Yeah, and whinging for a long time. That for me was one of the light parts. I mean, there was obviously the dark, the shade bit around, the that refugee influx from Europe because of a war. Yeah, that's obviously pretty bad. But I think the other piece that was because I guess relatively speaking, this is fairly low stakes, I'd say, in terms of all the different things. However, it is another way of people being divided on something in my mind. So, and it becomes, because it is, has a religious element to it, because it has this really long-standing cultural element to it as well. It feels like something that people would really get themselves worked up about, and would
100%. Yeah.
and would cause quite considerable stresses in families and all of those kind of ripple effects as well. And another reason that employers would have to make a stand around that, which one do they recognize as a public holiday and pay people double time for, or whatever it is. So that was, I suppose, the and it's it's not super loud, I don't think, in that way, but it definitely would come. That was how it would play out, I'd imagine.
I particularly like the part of it as well where Queensland chooses to abstain.
Yeah.
My feeling is, though, that it would potentially also be Western Australia.
You know what? I thought that, and then I thought you'd think I was picking on you. I felt like Queensland was like neutral picking on ground for this conversation.
Right, yeah.
So originally I had put WA, and I was like, oh no, you're going to be like, no, why did you pick WA?
Yeah. This is all part of their accession plan.
Exactly right. Yeah.
But I do like that. But I also think about that. You said the northern, Rivers region, northern New South Wales, and you kind of almost have this interface zone.
Yeah.
Where some people would almost like some people therefore choose to never celebrate Christmas, and some would choose to celebrate it twice. Like some people I always knew this whole thing was a sham.
Yeah.
I'm not doing either Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's legitimate. Like, I actually go across the border to not celebrate.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, true. Yeah, people go the other way as well. Yeah. Yeah, I can just imagine though as well, like they almost across the highway. I think it's the M1 or something that's between Queensland and sort of Northern Rivers. They'd almost be like fairy lights over the over the highway kind of thing. Like, welcome to Christmas.
Yeah, and you are now leaving Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the thought way we do this to kind of provide a little bit of like a separation between your scenario and mine, is we're going to insert an ad from our future sponsor. So in the shows, as normally done in post-production, I listen to the episode and then I kind of devise hopefully a slightly shitty fake ad from a future sponsor we don't have yet, but would love to have some point in the future, even if it is in 2050. As I normally I've done this myself, but I actually said, well, let's do this together. Let's actually get you, Steph, to create your own fake future sponsor, which you have done. So we're going to play your fake future sponsor's ad now. And then when we come back, we're going to flip the script and we're going to share a second scenario. Sound good?
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to hearing yours.
Okay, so let's play your ad now.
Is your toy factory melting due to climate change? Have you been laid off due to self-driving gift delivery vehicle implementation? Are you working overtime due to an influx of AI-generated Christmas lists featuring toys that do not exist? You might be entitled to compensation. Mary Donna Blitz are a law firm specialising in North Pole seasonal worker employment matters and are here to help you get the representation you need. Mary Donna Blitz, protecting Christmas for everyone.
That's great. I love it. Mary Donna Blitz.
Yeah.
I like that. That's beautiful. Like it has there's a playfulness to that as well.
Yeah, well, I had thought about doing like a Santa kind of future thing, but I was like, oh, it just feels a bit it's breaking the rules of physics, which you're kind of not really allowed to do in futures work typically. So I thought the way I can get around this is by using this in the fake ad.
Yes. And I do love as well, like in this kind of world of hyper litigation,
Yeah.
it feels like entirely legitimate that you would have a law
There's
firm.
definitely stuff there was definitely like substance behind it. Yeah. Mm.
Okay. So
I think the thing with this one, I guess, this episode, because normally you will have read the scenarios beforehand, which you hadn't done. That was the first time you heard mine. And obviously this is then also means this is the first time I've heard yours. So this is, again, different and fun.
are you ready for that though? That's the question. Are you ready for that much fun?
Well, I'll let you know if you look up from reading and I'm not here because I've fallen on the floor because it's so much fun, you'll know I was not ready.
Well, let's hope that you don't do yourself an injury in this.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's do this thing. Our second scenario on the future of Christmas. The scene was simultaneously familiar and eerily different. The raised dais, the gilded red velvet throne, the celebratory songs drifting out of banks of speakers lining the stage. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. The audience waited in anticipation. These were the true believers, the ones willing to brave the cold, huddled together for warmth, only illuminated by the light of their holographic candles. The ones willing to sing festive songs, all eager to catch a glimpse of the big man himself. We gather here together to celebrate this day. And then he appears, striding confidently across the stage, waving at the crowd, his red suit a powerful symbol, no, a celebration of the political movement he now leads. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. We hold our banners high tonight, and for our leader we do pray. Farron Clump stopped in the middle of the stage. He pauses, waiting for complete silence. And when the place was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, he waits a little longer. Farron was a student of history and he was acutely aware of how the great orators of the past used long pauses and silence to build tension and ultimately complicity. As many of you know, the 25th of December is an auspicious day in our movement. It's a day where we celebrate the great work done by those who have come before us, the giants on the shoulders of which we now stand. Once again, he pauses for effect. This is the day we celebrate those who made our world great again. The ones who are willing to make the sacrifices required to protect us, to build the walls that now surround us, and not just the physical walls on our southern and northern borders, the walls of missiles, the walls of sea mines, the tariffs and financial controls, the walls that deter all those people from all the shitholes around the world, the Grinches looking to steal our festive cheer. Another lengthy pause. But because of that protection, we celebrate the abundance of food, the abundance of health, and the abundance of love that you have for your party, your nation, and for me, your great leader. The crowd launches into thunderous applause. Of course, the picture that Farron painted didn't necessarily fit everyone's reality, or anyone's for that matter, but following the total enshittification of the internet and the party's comprehensive control of the synthetic news media, it was impossible for anyone to know what was really real anymore. And although Malga Day still felt a little uncomfortable, you were told it was like a new pair of shoes that you just hadn't worn in yet. And there was no end of news articles pointing out that before Malga Day, there was a consumer-driven abomination called Christmas, a version of Christmas that most people didn't miss and even less could afford. Of course, a small number of people still hold on to the religious traditions that came before the post-Christmas, pre-Christmas, and pre-Christmas sales. But if you weren't very careful and very discreet, you risked receiving a visit from ICE, the Illegal Institutions and Custom Enforcement Agency. And somewhere far away from this rally, there was still a handful of communities that remembered the distant origins of Christmas, the pagan festivals that celebrated the winter solstice, and the abundance of food that followed the harvests. But whether it be the people gathered together at a political rally, the making and gifting of small trinkets, a family joined in sinful prayer, or a group of friends gathered around a small fire that had been lit inside a barn to avoid satellite detection, some things about Christmas hadn't changed. Christmas was still a time when friends and families gathered, when bread was broken and food was shared. Despite another attempt at the co-option of Christmas, it was still a time of gratitude, celebration, and connection with the people we love.
Did you have to put that last bit in just to make it somewhat nice? Again, light and shade.
A little light and shade.
Oh, it's all shade. I need to there's a little bit of light at the end.
Well, no, but this actually was the conclusion I came to, having written the whole thing, was that, so this concept that Christmas has been co-opted over time is real.
Yeah.
There is a kind of a distant pagan aspect of Christmas, which is around the winter solstice, and there's an abundance of the harvest. And obviously this was co-opted, by Christianity somewhere a couple of thousand years ago, has since really kind of been co-opted by what is kind of this consumerist version of Christmas that a lot of us feel ourselves existing at the moment. Very reasonable that it would be co-opted again, in this case by a political movement. But if you look through all of those versions of it, whether it be the pagan version, whether it be the Christian version, or even the current consumerist version, this bit about us coming together with our friends and families, actually the thing that's still the bit that ties it together. In fact, that's the bit that people are trying to co-opt. They're trying to co-opt the bit and go, how do we associate this thing that we think is important with the thing that you love? It's almost like how Facebook managed to co-opt our friends and call it a social platform. It's like they took something that really was dear to us and that we weren't willing to let go of and tried to add themselves into the mix. So in some ways, I look at it actually like quite legitimately. I mean, there's a darkness to this. But I generally did look at the end of it and go like, oh, but there is actually a deeper truth to Christmas, which provided its own light, so to speak.
Yeah. Even though the light can't be detected, shouldn't be detected by satellites
Yes.
or drones. Grinch drones. And I think it's interesting as well when I think about the conversations I've been having with more and more people this year. It feels more so, just in real life. Is that's almost the bit that people all try and keep coming back to. Is like, just want to get together with the people I really like. And so people kind of opting out of certain things that have become just default for the last, decade or long, decades sometimes. And, the stress that comes with it as well. And, often their parents who are like, well, it's got to be like this because that's how it's always been. And, kind of working themselves into a tiz. And then, people sort of, probably our sort of generation just being like, enough. What do we actually want to do? What's fun? What's good? What is everyone going to have a nice time doing? Let's do that. And that might be going away and actually kind of breaking the habit by putting yourself in a new location for that period of time, or doing it on different days. Like actually just sometimes removing it from like the 25th of December is enough to kind of change the defaults of what you're going to do and how it will happen and who does what and everything. Yeah, it feels like that's the bit that people keep trying to come back to. But then like the other stuff keeps like encroaching.
Yeah, and because we are literally marketed to about trying to make it something more than that.
Yeah.
I think two things I've definitely picked up. I think the cost of living challenges a lot of people are facing. People are suddenly going like, oh, hang on, why are we spending all this money on gifts that I think the stat is that on average, like people value the gift that you were given at around 60% of what it cost to buy it. Like as a purely financial thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's not really great as a return on that giving type thing.
Yeah.
And I think so a lot of people are starting to go like, oh, hang on, why is this the bit that we feel that we're compelled to do? And as you said, what's the deeper thing here, the connection piece and the company piece? And I even think about my own personal experience. my family's also very distributed. I know yours is too. My parents are in Perth. My brother's in South Australia. My brother-in-law's in Queensland. So we've done a lot
They
of
don't celebrate
time.
Christmas, obviously. So yeah,
Was that, sorry?
where they don't celebrate
Yeah,
Christmas.
exactly. It's pretty awkward.
Yeah.
But like, so for many years, we have, we travel often for Christmas. Even this year, we're traveling up to Queensland. But one of the things that we found really hard as a result of that was that we didn't get that time together as a nuclear family. Like,
Mm.
there was a bit where it was like, oh, where's that bit that we wake up together and we get to have that little magical moment, especially when our kids were young. And so one of the things we did for a number of years is we would travel on Christmas Day.
Mm.
So we're often either traveling to WA or Queensland, obviously to get out of Melbourne, go somewhere it's actually warm in summer.
Yeah.
But what we found, because of the time difference in those places, we could actually wake up, we could have breakfast together, we could have our own little nuclear family thing. And that connection piece that we needed to have, jump on a flight and still arrive somewhere in time for, a
And
beer in the afternoon,
yeah,
a barbie,
and
whatever.
way
Yeah.
cheaper to fly on Christmas Day as well.
So, oh my God, going to the airport on Christmas Day is the best.
I know, I've
It's
done
like,
it before. It's so good.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is good. And I think as well, like it's interesting because when you first set the kind of, the task of the future of Christmas, first of all, my brain was like, okay, well, what are we actually doing the future of? Is it the future of religion? Is it the future of ritual? Is it the future of celebration? Is it the future of family and kind of family units and that kind of thing? Like, because the domains, to use the kind of, I suppose, somewhat technical term of Christmas is beyond just the 25th of December. It's like there's so many other things that we can actually be having an interesting conversation on the future of ... that are around that. And I think that, both of us have kind of touched on some of those things as well around like the social bit, the cultural elements, the, to an extent, the religious part as well. Like we both kind of had that, mentioned in ours as well. And then, also, is it a future of retail conversation? Because that's kind of the position we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I thought yes, you're right. So, often when people choose a topic, within that topic, there's so many different tangents that could be explored. It was quite possible for us, for our two scenarios, to almost have zero connection with each other. But it's weird that there's obviously so many interconnections. And I think probably there's a question that sits at the heart of both of them, that something is around questioning the consumerist aspect of Christmas. And so when I went about mine, it was like, if I was to think about what the future of Christmas, my first question, I suppose, was then, well, what was the past of Christmas?
Yeah.
And obviously, being aware of some of those previous versions that has existed, and potentially, therefore, well, why would we assume that the future is the same, is one thing. I think there's also, you pointed out, interesting one, the same signals that I drew on. So you mentioned around, Trump making his birthday a public holiday. It was not technically his birthday. It's actually the celebration of the armed forces.
Yes. Yeah.
It just happens to happen on his birthday.
Yes. I did see that. Yeah.
So again, that's an example of how something that's a national identity or a national holiday being co-opted for political purposes. So I saw the same type of thing as being, well, why wouldn't we also co-opt Christmas for a political reason? And, like, we want to look at a historical context of this. This also happened in Nazi Germany. And again, I think in autocratic states, there is a tendency to try and use those existing those forms of shared identity and co-opting them and making them political in nature. So it's interesting that even though, again, there's some similarities and there's some differences, it's also interesting that we drew on some similar signals and then kind of use them in some different ways.
Yeah. Did you come up with any, like, even if you didn't fully flesh them out, but when you were coming up with this one, did you come up with any backup, kind of like, oh, and this would be the, because, when you're doing a scenario, typically you're doing it on the most uncertain and the highest impact kind of areas. And then, which way might those go? Did you come up with any other versions of things that might play out that you just didn't expand on and do a scenario on?
Yeah. So finally, you talked about the Blue Santa concept.
Yeah.
Obviously, that idea. And so mine is obviously, I found it easy to set mine with a kind of a US context. And part of it was because a lot of those kind of trends that we're seeing are kind of, especially around kind of autocracy, political division, are more pronounced there in the US than they are here. So if we were to play this out in an Australian context, we might want to add another 20 years to the time horizon to see that level of conflict emerge. It's been very interesting, even over the last 12 months or so. We've kind of gone through a period of very high levels of Trumpism in Australia. So November last year, we had our council elections. A lot of councillors elected a disproportionate number of more right-leaning candidates because Trump was hugely popular in November. And yet we got 6 months later to our federal election, and the interest in that had waned dramatically because the reality of what that meant in terms of impact on people, on our social values and stuff had changed. And we have a different political system here as well in terms of mandatory voting, a bunch of things. But we can kind of go, so we are in some way insulated from some of that stuff. But if we do extrapolate and go, we're not fully insulated, it just may
No.
take a bit longer for it to get
Yeah.
here. So definitely the kind of concept of the blue Santa was something that I also kind of considered, but actually thought realistically, if we get to that level of authoritarianism, is any other a celebration of Christmas outside the mandated version would be largely shut down. But I do think what we would see is just like now, there are still people who celebrate this kind of festive season through the lens of the solstice, and like you would have these, it just goes underground. So there's potentially other things to be explored in what that underground version of like, what does underground consumerism look like would be a really interesting kind of area to explore.
Yeah, right. You got to it's like a bartering kind of consumerism type thing. Like, I don't know if those things even can go together, but there probably is a version. And I think as well, especially as people, it feels like at the moment, and again, this is like kind of a current trend, like how this plays out. Maybe it just dies out, in 25 years, it will sort of be irrelevant or be back to the fringes. Is people kind of picking and choosing from these more mystical, spiritual kind of, some real kind of, old, ways of thinking, and some kind of maybe more pseudo kind of, types of belief systems and things. So then, do you end up with more people? There being actually like a bigger proportion of people who go a bit harder onto the kind of the solstice and those types of celebrations and things. And you end up with that becoming a slightly more mainstream, maybe still slightly on the edges, but more mainstream than it currently is. Kind of going down that pathway as well. So you end up with people, leaning a bit harder against the consumerism and actually kind of, as with most of these things, going really far that way, against that.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be talked about almost in that space. Like you mentioned a little bit, and this kind of starts to fall into the intersection of our two scenarios. And we'll kind of expand on this a bit more after we've had the second fake sponsor slot. But there's also something around almost like festive tourism. And you touched on that, of people going across the border. But you might find, for instance, that people who are deeply aligned with these other versions of Christmas, whether it be the Christian version, like a religious version, or even the consumerist version, is that there's a level of, as I said, festive tourism. It's like, I can't celebrate like that here, so therefore at Christmas I'm going to go to Europe or to Australia. Obviously not in Australia because we do it in July now, but but there's a version of this where we kind of go somewhere where it's more amenable to the values and stuff that we hold. Now, again, I wonder what the counterpoint to that might be, whether it's like, no, there is no tourism. Like, part of the walls is it's not one way. We think the walls are about keeping people out. What was the stats I saw recently, which blew my mind, is that something like 40% of Americans would actually immigrate to another country if they could afford to do so. It's something astounding. And amongst women, it's much higher.
I bet it
is. It's like, so there's a lot of people who is like, oh, if I could leave, I would. You do wonder at one point, is if you've built the walls, are those walls less about keeping people out? And at some point, those walls become about keeping people in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of the conversation, isn't it? If like you want to stay, you've got to start having babies, and then that's a whole other dark kind of subplot to this current timeline that we find ourselves in. Because there are unintended and intended consequences of keeping people out, as many places are trying to do.
Yes, there is.
But
that's okay, because we'll still take them all.
As
long as they're European.
Exactly. Northern Hemisphere, but particularly European. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Where they just decided that it just makes more sense to have Christmas in July. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to listen to our second fake sponsor slot now. And then when it come back, and then we're going to just riff and chat a little bit more about some of these other kind of interpretations or extrapolations we can have around both the scenarios, but also generally what we're seeing in the world and how that might impact on our future festive spirit. Does that sound good, Steph?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so you have not seen this ad as well. So let's listen to our second fake future sponsor ad about making Christmas great again.
Are you tired of unpatriotic holiday music? Well then, this festive season get yourself a copy of Make Christmas Great Again, the approved carol collection Volume 3, including hits such as "O Come, All Ye Patriots." It's beginning to look a lot like Autocracy, Silent Majority Night, and everyone's favourite All I Want for Christmas is a Longer Border Wall. Fully endorsed by Cash, the Department of Celebratory Affairs and Sanctioned Holidays, this is the perfect festive soundtrack. Whether you're stuffing stockings or stuffing ballot boxes, you won't want to turn it off. Because if you do, you might just get reported by your neighbours. Get your copy now. Available where all good political merchandise and propaganda is sold.
It's so bleak. It's beginning to look a lot like Autocracy. This is
Yeah.
Ugh.
I don't know. I do. This is actually another just a interesting thing. Like, I do have a tendency when
Mm.
I write scenarios to write them in a way that is slightly dystopian.
Yeah, very much.
And I kind of believe like it's a conscious choice. Like, it's not just an accident. I don't have a necessarily a dark like frame. It's more like the power of dystopianism
Mm.
in terms of eliciting conversation and eliciting, you know, like people are more inclined if everything's too optimistic, it's like, well, there's nothing to be discussed here.
Talk about. Yeah. It's like,
It
great,
sounds
let's do
great.
that. Yeah.
Let's just do
Yeah.
that, right? And it's just like we then shy away from the choices that we make and the challenges that we may have to deal with, or how we might have to preempt and prepare for things.
Mm.
Is that like, tell me, is like in terms of your own approach, is that something that you think about a lot when you're writing scenarios as well?
Yeah, I don't think I probably do err a bit towards the slightly more dystopian, probably not as much as you do. I think you go there and then probably have to wind back sometimes, whereas I have to I kind of start there and sometimes have to push it a little bit more. I think for me, it's always remembering to have the light and the shade, because like you say, otherwise it's, it's either too dystopian, everyone's like, well, I don't want to think about that, or it's too great and utopian in some ways, and people are like, oh great, let's just do that then, please. I'll order one of those. So I'll order one of those features, thank you. So I think for me it's like you said, it's finding that balance, but also just having that question in the back of my mind all the time of who are the winners and losers, because it might actually not be obvious as well. And especially when you start thinking about the unintended consequences, what might look like someone who's going to win or lose in that kind of immediate, actually, if you extrapolate that out a little bit further, another 5 years, or even maybe more, maybe less, depending on the situation, you then go, oh, actually, that could really turn for those people who put this in place, or have got more power here, but maybe they can't keep that, or
Yeah.
whatever the different context is. And especially when you start, and I think for me, that stress test is always, what would happen next? And I might not write that in, but for me, it's that kind of thought experiment of what would happen next, and does that still make sense for this scenario to be the scenario? So I think that's often for me the kind of the bigger question.
So a couple of things I pick up on that. So first of all, I do also think that humor, like even though I write slightly
Yeah.
dystopian, I use the humor as a way of not like of almost like in letting the audience know
There's like a wink. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a wink. There's a, this is not real. Like there's a way of being able to articulate that, there's a certain satirical aspect of this that doesn't take away from the need for us to face some of these questions.
No.
But it's also a way of saying, I don't see this as being true necessarily. So that's one thing. I think there's other ways of playing around with that don't have to be utopian, dystopian. There's ways of shaping the conversation differently. So I think that's one thing that came up.
And just on that one, just very quickly, is I like, because that is definitely my tendency as well, to like insert some humour and some satire in there as well. And sometimes it's just the way you name something, like the competition company or the acronym or something, like you just had in your fake sponsor, like really nicely as well. But so that stuff, and that's the stuff that sticks with people, because then that's the stuff that when you're facilitating a conversation around it with a board or with an exec team or whoever you're working with, that's the stuff they keep coming back to. They're like, oh, well, I wouldn't want the Department of Cultural Affairs, whatever it is, to find me out, or whatever it is. But that's the stuff that sticks, and that's the stuff that keeps in the conversation. So you're like, cool, this is getting into the brains and provoking those conversations.
So interesting. Like I did I've done some work. We've both done a little bit of work with libraries. I did some work that would have been now 4 years ago, some of the work I started doing, and we wrote some scenarios that were looking at the future of libraries. And we had this fictitious thing called the McLibrary Corporation.
Yeah.
And that language is still used collectively in those organizations today. It is like a shorthand for almost a version of libraries that we don't want, where it becomes like just the standardized offering that has a minimum level of books with the minimum level of service, with the minimum level of like everything. So it's very interesting about how those can sometimes be created to add some humor or a little bit of jest, or, like, as you can send that signal to the audience that we're not taking this too seriously. Like we're not taking this as being super dystopian, but as I said, those pieces of information really stick with the audience.
And I think as well, like doing this as a practice, and this is just the way your brain starts to work after a while as you're thinking about the scenarios, even if you're not fully writing them out and fleshing them out and do, blah, blah, blah. It helps you ask just better questions as well. So when I was working with a group a couple of months ago, it was kind of within healthcare, kind of broadly, though, sort of share too much, but it was within the kind of healthcare umbrella of things. And we were talking about something and, sort of in the back of my mind, like, what's the different scenarios? Like, what's the weird ones? What's the kind of thing? And sort of said to the group, the exec and the board, and I was like, what would the supermarkets do if they had this problem? And they were like, oh. And it just really changed the conversation, because you then start to go, oh yeah, well, they would think of it like this. And part of that's the kind of I suppose elements of that sort of design thinking, kind of thinking with that as well. But you then start to flesh it out as a scenario in a micro kind of in a room kind of messy way, and it just creates this like a way better and way more interesting conversation. But I think you've got this kind of framing in your mind of, the scenario thinking, it just helps you kind of go different places.
You talked before about the winners and losers. And that's obviously a common framing of like, okay, so if this was to unfold, what happens if it gets accelerated is one way of being able to us to examine what the impacts might be in unexpected ways. But even that question, when we say, what happens if it's accelerated? What is the scope of acceleration? What's the future high and low variability in this? But then within that, what are the winners and losers? Talk me through with your scenario for a second. Like, it's shaped around this framing of that the power sits within big retail. When you kind of start to think about the impacts of big retail and its influence over Christmas, and even the things that we're experiencing now in terms of this very consumerist-driven approach to Christmas, where do you see the winners and losers in that? Because I'm trying to think back with your scenario, where do I pick that up? Like, what would you, when you look at that world, where do you see the winners and losers in that world?
I think, yes, the supermarkets. I think in Australia that feels like a bigger. We think about unchecked power. We talk about it from an autocracy. From the US, what's happening with their kind of political kind of landscape there around unchecked power, and then in other countries that's can be similar as well. And there's along the spectrum. In Australia, it feels like it's that kind of unchecked power is largely in supermarkets, and then probably equally, but probably in a bit of different ways around mining, coal, that kind of those kind of extractive industries as well. To an extent, airlines, but maybe slightly less so. And yeah, whereas in our political system, that, like you say, there's sort of balances that at the moment seem to sort of still be holding. So yeah, so it's more around like, well, who actually holds the power? Who could actually change this? And actually, for me, the first one that came to my mind and was like, oh, actually, it feels like it would be the supermarkets. It would be the duopoly that we have around them being like, you know what, this isn't working for us in December. Let's change it. But there also being those kind of cultural things that made it easier to change. Like, I think they tried to change it to March or something. That wouldn't have worked. If it was even August or September, might not have worked as well. Like Christmas in July is already kind of a thing. So how do we leverage that? So again, it's that kind of the trends mapping that, FMCG and retail and fashion and all the rest are, very, it's a very established thing for them to be doing.
I think also if you went further back in that supply chain as well, like if you work in manufacturing, the hardest thing of all is lumpiness in demand. And there's such a lumpiness, a global lumpiness in demand when you talk about Christmas. So I think you'd also kind of see Amazon would be very on board. And again, if we look, a couple of decades into the future, you would imagine that, the online retailers, especially the large online retailers, obviously already have significant power in the marketplace. But then again, what they represent is they're starting to think about this through a logistics exercise. And they go like, well, it'd be so much easier for us if we didn't have everybody's Christmases in the world line up.
Exactly. Yeah.
So again, it could almost be, we start to talk about what's the global shifts happening around this is what we would want to do is if we were in, if we were in kind of global manufacturing, global retail, what we would like to do is ideally a Christmas type event, consumerist event every month of the year.
Yeah.
In different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's also one of the things I kind of thought of is there's another in some ways, much more dystopian version where it's Christmas every day. And in somewhere has decided, you know what, this is great. Let's just do this every day. And they do that. And well, the other thing I was going to say as well is that actually in Europe, if it hadn't have been decimated in this, my unfortunate scenario, then maybe they would be like, you know what? It's kind of a pain in the ass having all these deliveries and all this logistics stuff and all the rest, like in the middle of winter, like the snow's up to our eyeballs and, maybe in Canada and, north of the US as well might have that challenge too. So let's move it. So maybe like the hemisphere is kind of almost flipped just to like, and maybe theirs is in like October or something like that. It kind of ends up being, just in those sort of shoulder months where it's a bit quieter or whatever. So anyway, I think there's a bunch of stuff, but yeah, the kind of everyday Christmas, and there's a book I'm reading at the moment, which is great. It's called The Future by Naomi Alderman. Have you read that one yet?
Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I have read that.
So good. I'm loving it. And but in one point, one of the main characters, Zeng, gets caught in this situation in a shopping center in Singapore. But in this shopping center in Singapore is like it's like a Westfield or whatever, but like even more so in the future with this like hyper consumerism and in this big mall, you can go to the different zones where it is Christmas every like 82 hours or something like that. They're like their annual cycle, and then you go, and then New Year, there's another one that's like New Year's every 82 hours, or like on this, like they have like the different sort of timelines and things, and all these different things happen, and you can just go and just be in that world. And she talks about kind of walking around and seeing all these people who like clearly just are there kind of all the time because they want to harness, they just want to hold on to that thing. So bleak and tragic.
Yeah.
I almost feel like, again, if you think about sort of some of the other stuff going on, it's almost like in the absence of anything else that's kind of good or working, this kind of escapism that something like Christmas or whatever can create. So that's why maybe some places are like, it's just going to be Christmas and it'll be really nice and it'll be fine and everything's fine because it's Christmas every day kind of thing.
Do you wonder, like, so in this kind of, through my scenario, I talk about this in co-opting that's happened over time. And I imagine like the people the people who celebrate Christmas still through a pagan lens of like the solstice feel frustrated by the religious co-option, right? And the religious, the Christians feel frustrated by the consumer, right?
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah.
But I also wonder that if, say, for instance, the consumer culture was to go, no, we're just going to take Christmas and make it in July.
Yeah.
You can have your 25th of December
Yeah.
and be as religious as you like.
Yeah.
I actually wonder whether or not, like, by taking all the power away or all the kind of focus away from that day, whether it be maybe I think at a Christian level where they're like, oh, hang on, but it was ours.
Yeah.
Like you took it away from us.
Yeah.
Even though what you're taking away is only the consumer aspect of it, which they would otherwise be fighting backward against.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you're taking the energy of Christmas away from us, as opposed to just taking the consumerist aspects of Christmas away from us.
Yeah. Yeah. Like what you'd often have, you'd almost, I think, especially at this point, like, because it's been going on so long and that kind of consumerism shift, like you say, has been, this is decades in the making. It's almost like, what would it be without that for people? Like for, for a kind of group of more religious, Christians, we're going to be like, oh, okay, well, we've got it back. Now what? Like, what does it look like when you haven't got those trappings around it that everyone's been, more or less everyone's been exposed to throughout most probably their whole lives at this point?
Mm.
Yeah. It made me think as well when I was doing mine, and especially because I'm reading that book at the moment as well, around like what's the kind of like post-apocalyptic Christmas. So if you're in your bunker in New Zealand or something, when you have to kind of rebuild it from scratch, like do you even, especially if you don't have that religious connection to it, like what do you end up recreating when you kind of start from nothing again?
Yeah. I wonder, like, there's maybe there's something about a stripped back version of all of it. One thing, my daughter, so every year I make like spices for my awesome mix.
I'm very excited about this year's one.
Yeah, we're seeing each other in real life tomorrow, and you'll be expecting a jar, I imagine.
This is, yes, I've been trying to use last year's up to make room for this year's on the spice rack. So
you're expecting that you're going to make the cut though, that's interesting as well.
Oh, this is my prize for winning, surely.
Yeah. But like, so I make that. My daughter actually is amazing that she will always make gifts for people. It does talk about a nice scenario is that there are people who go, we can't afford the consumerist version, and because there aren't the sales and stuff on that, because it's no longer it's actually being co-opted as a political movement. Yeah. But people who still make things. Like I'm still going to make things. I'm still going to give the gift as a way of just acknowledging.
I think there's a service element as well. Yeah.
And again, it's like I don't fully understand the deep pagan beliefs around Christmas, but the idea of there is a bonfire and there's an element of eating together, right? I get that bit of it.
Yeah.
And I just wonder whether or not you end up potentially in both scenarios a slightly simplified version of both. Like, whereas kind of like, and again, I suppose where I came to with mine was that's probably the common element is we spend time with our families. We're grateful for that, what we have.
Or, sort of chosen family and things as well, which I think is, yeah.
And we may find small ways of saying thank you in acts of service or gift giving, but it's not in the version of it that it's been kind of that's become. So I think that's interesting in terms of maybe there is like some genuine positivity in a future version of Christmas that we don't have today.
Yeah. You asked me earlier, and I don't think I really answered it, about the kind of winners and losers in mine. I think one of the other things that would be interesting is around like school color calendar as well, which is, it's funny, I just gave someone the other day or over the weekend a like very quick rundown of my scenario, and they're like, but when would the school holidays be if it wasn't? I was like, I mean, I think that's a quite easy problem to solve, because you might still have a summer holiday. It's just not at Christmas like most of the rest of the world. So that's and they were like, oh yeah, that's not just here, is it? Like, no, that's just they
Christ is averted.
They just happen to collide here, like the summer holidays and the Christmas holidays. Yeah,
but as you said, everywhere else in the world they managed to make do with the summer holiday that doesn't
yeah
it doesn't go with Christmas.
Yes, so there is that. But there's there's almost the kind of infrastructure, I don't know if it's quite the right word, but kind of the everything else that like the year kind of works around that kind of thing happening at the end of the year. And then, but there's like a bunch of other stuff as well that would have a little knock-on effect around, oh, when do we do that? Or what happens with this thing? And anyway, so
So one of the things I find when we do these types of things,
Mm.
and we write a scenario, we invest energy
Mm.
and mental effort in envisioning and exploring a future,
Mhm.
and almost through that effort, it shapes us or changes us a little bit. Is there anything that, having done the work, you think you might do differently, or has changed your perspective on anything like about Christmas?
It's been interesting doing it this year because I feel like I've been having a bit more of a kind of like, "Oh, what do I even do at Christmas?" Because I guess I haven't really. It's funny what we kind of associate like real Christmas with and Christmas. And I feel like I've not had a real Christmas for 10 years which was the last Christmas I went back to the UK for was Christmas 2015. And since then, I've just, what was really cool about moving to literally, the other side of the world was being here with my, partner at the time. We're not together anymore, but being like, oh, well, would we do it Christmas? Because there's no obligation. Like there's so much obligation around Christmas. But when it was just us, we're like, oh, well, I guess we make it up and we have, we do something fun and, we do what we want to do. And it became like its own thing for, the rest of the time we were together, which was, another kind of like 8 or 9 years or whatever at that point, or 10 years at that point. So it was, it was kind of cool to kind of have that. And then since that, wasn't in that relationship the last, couple of years. And then me and a friend, last couple of Christmases and over kind of Christmas and New Year, we've gone hiking and camping and stuff and kind of had like more of an adventure Christmas. And then that can't happen for various injuries and things this year. So I'm kind of back to this kind of like, oh, what's Christmas again? And my kind of European contingent of friends are all back in the UK and Europe this year for Christmas with, their families and sort of immediate families and things. So again, just being like, this has felt like a very like, real kind of thing around, well, what do I even, because I'm not religious and so therefore there's not that kind of piece, but for someone who, Christmas doesn't mean anything in that way, it still has that kind of like hold on me and probably others as well. Of like, oh, well, even though it doesn't really mean anything, it kind of does. And what do I do with that? And kind of feeling a bit orphaned this year and don't really know what to do with that either. And but it did really, then, all of it did come back to that thing of, well, what do I want to do at that time of year, or whatever it is, and, whatever I want to call it or whatever, spend time with the people I want to spend time with. And so, but not end up in this kind of weird default position, which I think is really easy to kind of fall into.
Yeah, I know. Like, so we're both quite big on concepts around kind of rituals and doing things that create, like, they have a momentum around them, or creating things that have a momentum around them. And what I hear,
also an expectation. I think there's a piece of that as well around, that kind of that collective kind of thing of being like, cool, what are we going to do this year? Like we've got there is an element, there is somewhat level of ritual or framework. And then it's like, it's a really collective, co-created kind of thing that's fun to co-create.
Yeah.
Oh shit, what's Simon doing this year? Like, oh God, I'm going to talk to Simon about Christmas kind of thing. Like, this should be fun.
Yeah. And I think on one hand, when you first came, it sounds like you kind of were quite happy to escape from like the rituals that were existed.
Yeah, to an extent, like definitely some I miss, but also when you move to the other hemisphere, it doesn't feel like Christmas. So that was the other thing as well. Like there wasn't that kind of homesickness or whatever that other people kind of described or have described when they moved to maybe another country in the same hemisphere.
Yeah.
And had that kind of first Christmas without their family or, whoever it is they spend Christmas with. And it felt hard. Whereas this was like, oh, it's weird. Like everyone's like saying Merry Christmas and wearing silly hats, but it's 25 degrees. Like,
but also I wonder, like, when you moved here, and again, I'm just presupposing a couple of things, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
I will.
Like you were in your mid-20s or so, somewhere around
I
that?
was 26 when I moved. Yeah.
Like, I think at that age, we don't necessarily appreciate the value of ritual in the same way as we might when we get older, or in the value of family and the value of these things. Like, we're out there trying to, exert our independence and individualist.
I was 2, apparently. So that's
right. But like, I think like even now, like, I kind of think about it with my own parents who are getting older, and I'm very conscious of the fact, like, oh wow, like, I mean, how many more Christmases do we get together?
Yeah.
And so the rituals and stuff around it become more important. So I do wonder whether or not at the time when you left, there was like, oh, okay, cool. There's almost like there's a novelty and there's an excitement about what this might be. And in that space, there isn't a need to create new rituals.
Yeah.
But I do think that perhaps potentially like that's maybe what is missing. Is like I wonder what, given someone who deeply loves those concepts and the importance of things that are a part of this, the cycles that we share and especially with friends and family and stuff. I wonder what your ritual would be or could be if you got to create one at this moment. And knowing that ritual, like most of them, they really build a life over time. Like they don't, I've been
on. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, but it's almost like I got friends, for instance, back in Perth, their family ritual was they didn't really care what happened on Christmas morning or during the day, but there was always a Christmas party at their place starting at 5:00. So it doesn't matter who, everyone was welcome. Like all their kids' friends were all welcome. There was always going to be a Christmas party at their place starting at 5:00. And everyone, like you got invited once, but then you knew about it and it kind of built over time. And I remember going one, there must have been, I don't know, 50 or 60 people there on a Christmas evening. Like, and it was just, that was their thing, right? That they had created. And again,
and it sounds like from what I know from people who grew up in WA, that's also a very WA type of thing, is like the backyard party is like a much more of a ingrained kind of thing. Whereas like maybe on the East Coast, that's slightly less so. Maybe in certain pockets that is the case. Maybe in some of the surf towns and stuff, maybe a little bit more. But in WA, like it was, people have told me it's kind of almost hard to sort of break in living there when you just move there and aren't from there, because you can't really find anyone because everyone's around someone's house kind of thing. Like they're all, it's kind of tucked away a bit more, but still really social and communal, but just less visible.
Yeah, when she first moved over to Perth, when we were dating and she kind of came over to live with me, she was just blown away about how efficient West Australians are at organising barbecues.
Yeah.
Like the idea that we just go like wake up on a Saturday or Sunday going like, we should have a barbecue. You make 4 or 5 phone calls and literally within a couple of hours, people turn up with meal, like stuff for the barbecue and salads and drinks. And it's almost like you just magic this out of thin air. She was like, you couldn't do that in Melbourne because just the geography of the place is like someone would have to go like, well, that's 2 hours across town and then have to do this and that. Yeah, but Perth, that's very much, it's just, we're very, very good at barbecues.
Yeah, well, and also in Melbourne, it's like, well, it'll probably be raining by then. So
yeah.
Whereas in WA, it's like, yep, it's going to be like this for the next 3 weeks.
So what would your ritual be, Steph? Like if you could create one, like your ideal ritual, what would it look like?
It would be like, and again, without being too like mushy about this, it would be with like my favorite people. And that's very, I realize that's very kind of selfish because then they can't be with their favorite people. They'd have to be with me. But, but like, it would be like, a smallish, small to medium group. But it would be like that kind of, right, at 4:00 or 5, whatever time, everyone will be here. And
but it's even been like, I wonder if it's almost like, in the evening, it's like, or even it's Boxing Day.
Yeah, whatever. Or Christmas
like
Eve, actually, I think that's
where you just kind of say to people, it's like, almost like there's something symbolic about it being on Boxing Day, which is like, it's the and.
Yeah.
It's like, you've got family and.
Yeah.
And is the next day. Yeah. And, we do that and we have our own version of this, which is our and, where you come round. Yeah. I like that. And you can basically.
Yeah. And I always preferred the food when like my kind of Christmases growing up, I always preferred the Boxing Day celebration because it always just felt less heightened in terms of like the expectation, the stress. And not necessarily because it was with a different side of the family. So, not necessarily that I preferred one side of the family to the other at all. It was not that, but it was much more like the food was more chill. And actually I way preferred the food on Boxing Day as well. Like that was, fun. And it just was less, just less like, well, it's Christmas Day. It's got to be, kind of thing.
I was speaking to someone the other day that they do their thing with their family on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
But not in the evening. Like they will go somewhere kind of mid-afternoon. They'll go to a nice restaurant in the city and there'll be 8 or 10 of them that catch up.
Yeah, nice.
And they have a leisurely kind of late lunch that kind of goes into the evening. And then somewhere around 9:00, they all head home. And it's actually already taken all the pressure off Christmas.
Yeah.
It's like whatever happens the next day now is going to be just super relaxing.
Had a nice time. Yeah, that's really nice. I like that. And I think Christmas, in continental Europe, many countries on the continent, they celebrate like Christmas Eve is the day kind of thing. So, which is always nice when I've got some German friends. We used to do orphan Christmases with them, so it was quite good because they would have done their big thing on Christmas Eve. We'd then do something on Christmas Day. And then everyone would go off and do their own things on Boxing Day or whatever. So that was always quite nice for that reason because everyone kind of got the thing. But yeah, no, I think for me it would be like a kind of maybe like a slightly rotating kind of group, but kind of a core-ish group of some of my favorite people, and just be like, this is what we're doing. And actually for it to be like a really joint, fun, communal thing that every year everyone's like, what's the and there's an element of like structure or an element of ritual, like, oh, that thing will happen at 5 o'clock because that's kind of what we do, whatever. But there'd be like an element of, right, who's bringing this or who's doing that, and something along those lines, which is what I've quite enjoyed about the camping and hiking things that me and Emily have done over the last couple of years, because it's been like, okay, cool, what's this Christmas's trip is going to be. And last year we did a Christmas Day on Pambula Beach in New South Wales down the Sapphire Coast, which was stunning, and then did some hiking and mountain biking around there, and then went up to Kosciuszko and did that as our kind of New Year's hike, was the Cosi. We finished on the top of the world, certainly in Australia. So and kind of had like, that was our New Year's hike kind of thing. So, which actually was quite fun. So we were going to do it from New Year's Eve into New Year's Day to kind of really kind of amp that up. But the weather wasn't going to be great on those 2 days. So we did it from the 29th into the 30th. So we had fake New Year's. And what was really fun, so we had like a fake New Year's at the top on the sort of, morning of the 30th. We're like, Happy New Year at sort of, 6 a.m. whatever time we kind of summited. And it's funny, we saw 2 other women up there as well, probably around our age. And they were doing exactly the same thing. They were like, oh yeah, we saw the weather wasn't going to be good, the next 2 dadays. So we're also having a fake New Year. So we were like, Happy New Year to each other. So that was really fun as well. Because like some of those things you can't plan. You just got to let it happen.
Yeah, I reckon the thing that I've taken away is, I think I would love to incorporate into our traditions, like what we do within our family, something that involves like a fire. So and I'm not sure, maybe
it's usually a fire ban season in most places.
I know that's a problematic. That's the only problematic part of it. But the idea of like,
Not in
what
July,
is the
though.
thing? But what's the reminder of the pagan origins, right? Like we already do a pretty good job. Like I love cooking, as you know.
Yeah.
So I've already kind of planned to cure my own salmon so that we can have that on Christmas. So the stuff around the feasting or the kind of the food aspect of it has always kind of been very important to me anyway. But I almost like want to have something that feels a little bit out of kilter, like that is the reminder of the origins of this thing. So that almost like you're like something like kids go like, Dad, why are you lighting a fire? And it's like, yeah, but like this is what it was actually originally about. And let's just not forget that everything that we have done since then is a co-opted version of this.
Yeah.
And almost like there is a deeper truth that's worth connecting with. And I don't know, like I said, I understand problematically about fire and fire bans and stuff.
Yeah.
But also there's a level of like, almost like the fact that it's not what you would normally do in the middle of summer in Australia also makes it the point about why it stands out. So I'm open to other recommendations, by the way, but that's kind of where I'm leaning at the moment.
Gas barbecue, unfortunately. That's the only option.
Gas barbecue, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Steph, we are almost out of time.
We are.
And so the future of Christmas is almost over.
It is. Yeah.
This is the point, like, I suppose, from the analogy point of view, we have eaten our fill. We are now going to slumber on the couch for the rest of the day.
Dad's asleep already on the sofa. Yeah.
Yeah. But I know that you and I do get to back this up again tomorrow with our
Grandma's drunk again.
Grandma's drunk, yeah. Yep, a little bit too much sherry in the Christmas pudding. Yeah. But we get to catch up and do this again tomorrow in real life, and I'm looking forward to seeing you then. But thank you so much for coming and enjoying and celebrating the future of Christmas with me.
This is fun. I'm glad you initiated this about a week ago. This was a fairly short turnaround on writing a scenario. So hopefully no clients get any ideas from that. But it was this is great.
Yes, normally writing scenarios takes a lot longer, is way more expensive.
Yeah. Invoices in the post for this one, Simon. So.
All right. Merry Christmas, Steph.
Thanks. Merry Christmas. Have a great summer.
Yeah. Well, that is all for this week's episode of The Future with Friends. If you've enjoyed the episode and you want to support the show, the number one thing you can do is share it with your friends. In fact, it would give me no greater joy than to think in a small way the conversations I'm having with my friends could be a positive influence on the conversations that you are having with yours. Other ways to support the show include going onto the podcasting platform of your choice and giving us a rating. Obviously, I would like it to be 5 stars, but you should ultimately do whatever feels right for you. And if you don't feel quite ready for that yet, if we're not at that point in our relationship, the other thing you can do is send me small gifts in the mail. I always enjoy receiving them. Well, that is all for this week. We will be back in another couple of weeks with the next episode. And so until then, my friends, I look forward to seeing you again.